Data cleaning and EDA is the primary step of data analysis. So in this video, let's understand how to clean your data, how to do exploratory data analysis using Power BI. Let's go. For the purpose of this exercise, we are going to use this Netflix movies and TV shows dataset that is publicly available on kaggle.com. I've got a link for this in the video description. Feel free to grab it if you want to follow along. This dataset is a listing of movies and TV shows on Netflix. Here is how it looks. I've downloaded this data, so let me show you how this looks in Microsoft Excel. So here you can see that there are many columns, show ID column, type of the show, title, director, cast, country, etc. And there is also a description of the show. And this data has 8,807 rows. As you can see, there are many blanks and other problems with this data. So let's load this into Power BI. We are going to perform these 10 types of analysis on the data. Along the way, you're going to understand various critical steps of data cleaning and EDA using tools of Power BI, that is Power Query as well as visualizations. Let's go. I'm going to open Power BI desktop and click on the report. And let's get the data. As our data is in the text/CSV format, I'm going to use this button and point to the file that I have just downloaded from Kaggle. You're going to get a preview of the data here. As we do need to clean up this data, I'm going to click on the transform data button so we can jump into Power Query and perform all the cleanup steps. So essentially, Power Query is the data cleaning engine of Power BI, and using this, you can perform many types of data cleaning steps and set up automations. But here is something that not many people know. Power Query can also be used to perform exploratory data analysis or EDA. This is because Power Query not only helps you clean the data, but also gives you at a glance information about your data. For example, just by loading the data into Power Query, you can see that there are these green bars appearing on top of each column. A green bar all the way through tells me that there are 100% values in that particular column. Whereas here in the director column, we can see that only 69% of values are available and 31% are empty or missing. So Power Query helps you understand your data even before you load it into Power BI. There are many other powerful features within Power Query to help us with EDA. I'll talk about them later on. But for now, let's first make this row number 1 as the headings. To do this, from the home ribbon, click on Use First Row as Headers option. And now each of our columns has a proper heading. Let's scan through this data. As we can see, there are 12 columns of data, each describing one aspect of the Netflix show or the movie. The type column describes what types of shows are available. Right now, we only have movies and TV shows. So those are the only two available. Whenever you load a lot of data into Power Query, you will see that it will tell you list may be incomplete when you are loading this data. This is because Power Query by default only gets the first 1,000 rows of your data. In fact, it also shows that information at the bottom here, column profiling based on top 1,000 rows, as well as 12 columns, 999 plus rows. So it doesn't really bother looking at the entire data set of 8,000 rows. It just looks at the first 1,000 rows so that we can get started quickly. But if you want, you can click on this button and then say profile based on the entire data set. What this does is it lets Power Query read through the entire data set and build these column profiles, the green bars on the top. As well as when you look at the filter, you can also use the load more button so that you can see the whole thing. Now, when I look at this, I can see the cracks in our data and all the ugliness and all the clumsiness emerging. For example, I was expecting to see just movies and TV shows in the type column, but now we also have a blank and William Wyler as a value. I'm not even sure what is going on here, so I'm going to just filter that and see what's happening. So here it says show ID is Flying Fortress and double quotes William Wyler. What might have happened, and again this is just me guessing, is I'm just going to clear this filter. When you look at this description here, this description is quite long and contains many commas. As the file is a comma separated format, anytime you have got a long value that has commas, the whole thing needs to be encoded within double quotes. But sometimes when people scrape the data, a mistake might happen, and that is the reason why we are getting William Wyler as a value in the type column. Let me just show this to you in the raw data. So I'm going to open my file in Notepad++. So here is the raw data, and let's just search for, he looks like a popular actor. So here we have got Flying Fortress, and you can see that this is how it is encoded. The reason why this is happening is it's actually, you can see that 8422 and 8423, two separate lines. So there is a new line character after a story of A, which is kind of forcing the comma separated values to treat this thing as its own thing, and hence breaking the whole thing. So if I delete a space here and bring that back and adjust the line, that should fix the problem. This is one way of cleaning the data where you are manually intervening. Normally you shouldn't really be doing that, but in this kind of a thing where writing a formula or a rule within Power Query is going to be so much more complicated than just deleting that extra space, you can just do that. But if you find that this sort of a thing is happening many times, you need to figure out a better strategy, which we will get on later as we uncover more aspects of Power Query. I'm going to save this file, Control S, and let's go back to Power BI and let's refresh. And I'm going to again hit on load more. So now we no longer have that William Wyler nonsense. We still have a blank row, which is probably something else going on. And we'll worry about this later, or we'll ignore this for now, because there is only one extra row which has this problem, and it's all right. So the first technique for data cleaning is to understand your data by loading it and profiling the entire data set if possible, and then visually glancing through your data using these green bars on the top. For example, right now I can see that my type column is 99% pure. It's all good. Title is also all good. There is one row empty value. It's probably the same row that is having empty value for the type. Director, on the other hand, has many empty values. We'll need to now figure out a strategy to deal with these kind of empty values and understand how to analyze the data when you have such large proportion of empty values. So that is our second step. How do we deal with these kind of empty values? One way to deal with these, just accept that as a reality of your data. So for example, there is a possibility that we don't know who is the director for 30% of the shows in our data. But you can also get creative and figure out some powerful strategies to deal with this. One strategy is, for example, if this particular show has a cast and we don't know the director, we can ask a question like, which other shows or movies where this cast has appeared and who is the director for that? If we have a director value for that, we could use that as a proxy here. Now, this is going to be just an approximation. We don't know if the same person would like to work with the same cast again and again, but you could use that as a strategy. As the cast members tend to vary and there is a lot of people involved in each show or movie, sometimes we may not even find another person with that. So for example, here is a TV show called Sex Education that has all these people. Let's say we want to see if these people have worked elsewhere in another show or movie and who is the director for that. To do this, I'm going to select this cell, right click, and then text filter equals, and we end up with just one row. So these set of individuals have not worked in any other movie or TV show. So we don't really know if we can have a proxy for the director. But if you want, you can, I'm going to undo this step, just delete that step there. Go back, and what we can also do is, instead of looking for the entire cast, just take the first 3 people and then look for that. To do that kind of a thing, we'll need to extract this. I'm going to just entertain this idea for a while, but we're going to come back and use a different strategy if that doesn't work. To get the first 3 people, I'm going to select my cast column and add a column, extract text before delimiter, and delimiter would be comma. Now we don't want to extract just the first person, we want to take the first 3 people. So I'm going to go to advanced option And number of delimiter to skip, I'm going to skip the first two delimiters. So what this should do is it should skip the first comma, second comma, and then give you all the people up to here. So for example, in this row, it should give you Mayur More, Jitendra Kumar, and Ranjan Raj. Let's click OK and see. This will add a column all the way at the end. And here we have got the first three people in the cast. Now, based on this, if the directory is blank, I want to see if they have worked in somewhere else. So let's go and allow on the spectrum, or maybe let's just go back to the sex education and then right click, text filters equals. Again, no luck. We haven't got these three people in any other row in our data. So sometimes it is very hard to find a matching like this, and this strategy, whatever we are trying to explore, doesn't work. And that is really what exploratory data analysis is all about. We don't know which way we are going. We are kind of like a visitors in a foreign land, and we are just exploring the data to find a good strategy or idea or build intuitions about data. I'll delete that step and let's go back and see a different way to handle the director missing values. Another simple alternative whenever the value is missing is encode it properly. So rather than leaving it as a blank cell, maybe we want to fill up the director column with no director available or director missing, so that we can then filter that out later on in Power BI and do some additional analysis. To do that, you can select the column, right click, and then say replace values. And replace values to find, as we don't have an existing director, we'll just leave that blank and replace with, and then here we'll say director missing. And when you click OK, all those blank values will now become director missing. And we could then, let's say if we load this data into Power BI, we can actually analyze this, or we can filter the director missing values for some additional analysis. While I was editing the video, I thought of a different way to deal with this missing director problem. That's why I'm wearing a different shirt, by the way. So as this is kind of like a publicly known data set, we know what these TV shows and movies are all about. You could also, for example, go to another kind of a data source like Wikipedia or IMDb, get the information for these TV shows and movies, who the director is and who the cast is, and load that. And where there is a missing value, join that with that other table. Power Query also allows for these kind of things. I talk about how to join and combine tables in my other Power Query videos. So check that out, and you could also use that strategy to deal with this problem. So this is one strategy for dealing with the missing values. Another strategy is, for that I'm going to use a different column like country. Let's say we don't know in which country the particular show or movie is produced. What do we do with that? We can again go with the same strategy and then say country missing. But here I'm going to show you a different approach. This approach is to use a most popular country. For example, if this value is missing, we can take a proxy of either United States or India or UK, one of the three most popular countries for producing Netflix content, and use that. How do I know those are the three most popular countries? That's based on my intuition, but let's actually find it in the data. To do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the country column and I want to profile this. So we can actually load this data into Power BI and kind of get some statistics around how many times each country appeared. But like I said, within Power Query itself, you can do a lot of this directly. So to do this, we're going to go to the view ribbon and enable the column distribution option. What this does is it kind of builds a simple column graph to show us what values are there. Unfortunately, I can't read any labels there. So what I'll do is I'll also enable column profile option so that we can see the distribution chart as actually a bigger chart here. And you can see here what I said earlier, which is United States produced 31% of the content. Next is India with 11% and then UK with 4%. So as these three are the most popular values in our data, if a value is missing, it is safe to assume that the show or movie is produced in United States because it is already very popular. And how many are missing? So here empty string is 832. So about 10% values are missing out of 8,808. And for those 10%, you can assume that is actually United States. But alternatively, again, you can go one level deep and then, for example, look at the cast members and then maybe take one or two of the cast members and then see where they normally like to act in. So for example, Sami Bawaji La, or whatever that name is, if I don't know which country this is, I can look for that person elsewhere. I'm just going to search for has appeared anywhere else. Unfortunately, again, this is one of those unique persons. He has not appeared anywhere else in the data. Or actually, no, it's filtering the whole thing. So I'm just going to clear and try text contains and then type the word Sami. All right, so here you can see that we are now looking for the string Sami B, and that person, first one we don't know, but the second one and third one, they have acted in France. So we can kind of easily proxy this value as France again, because that is the most likely answer here. So you could use that kind of a strategy for that. If you want to do that, then you will require more complicated formulas inside Power Query. I'm not explaining that because that will take like another 15 minutes to build that logic, but that is the approach. And once you know the approach, you can always search online or refer to my other Power Query tutorials to get the approach to fill this value here. Again, I'm going to undo this step, and instead what I'll do is I'll impute this with the most popular country. So the most popular country is United States. So I'm going to replace the values with missing value United States. So all the shows or movies, if I don't know where it is made, I'm just going to assume it is United States. If you want, you can actually adjust this and then add an extra A or something at the end to say that it is assumed to be United States. So that way, when you are analyzing the data, you don't confuse the actual United States with assumed values. But for now, this is all right. I'm just going to leave it as United States. Let's pause here for a second. How would you deal with these kind of missing values? Leave a comment and tell me your approach. While you are there, feel free to like this video and share it with a friend if you're enjoying it. Now let's go on and do some more data cleanup. The next step we are going to do is look at the date added column and see if we can convert this into a proper date. By default, within my Power Query, it has treated this date added column as ABC or alphabetical value. I'm just going to disable the column profile option. So we have the full screen for this. Let's take out the column distribution as well. And through the green bar here, I can see that about 11 values are empty and the rest have dates. That sounds logical to me given the amount of data that we have, but I want to make sure that how this data looks is all right. So the first step is we can try to convert this data column into a date directly. If that doesn't work, then we have to use some strategies. So I'll right click, change type to date. Here it has done that and the column is flagged. There is no red color here. Normally, if there is an error within a column, there will be a little bit of red color in this green bar. And in this case, when the date conversion happened, we didn't have any errors. I'm just going to expand this out and click on load more so that we can see. Again, we have reached the limit of 1000 values for this. So there's nothing else we can do. But it looks like all these data is properly converted into dates. Many times when you are cleaning the data, this is not how it may happen. You might actually have some red color issues here. For that purpose, we can't simulate with this data. So I'm going to show that to you in a separate file in a second. So here I have got some dates that are formatted as per the New Zealand date time format. So I have got day, month, year. But notice that my Power Query is set up to read US dates. So when I have these dates and if I try to change type to date, I'm going to get a lot of errors because it cannot convert these values into the date system using the US default that I have set on my computer. To fix these kind of problems, what you can also do is instead of using the date directly, you can use the using locale option. This is a powerful option using which I can take any data and convert it based on a different locale or world systems. So here I want to take the data type to a date But instead of using the English United States, I'm going to use English New Zealand, which follows the convention of day, month, year. And when you click OK, you're going to get everything converted properly. And where the value is missing, you're simply going to get null. No more errors. So this is a very useful technique that you can apply when you cannot read the data normally using the data type conversion options. Let's go back to our Netflix show thing here. So we converted the dates and the year is all right. I'm just going to convert this to a whole number. And again, we do have some blank values. This could be because of the missing information or one of those extra line situations that we had earlier. The rating column also looks all right to me. I'm not going to mess with that. The next interesting one is the duration column. Here the duration is kind of mixed. If it is a movie, then you have got minutes. If it is a TV series, then you have seasons. Now this sort of a combined data is really hard to analyze. So a good idea would be to extract the duration in minutes into a separate column so that maybe you can do some analysis by duration as a distribution or something else. To do that, what we would like to do is extract the duration to a new column and just print the minutes information alone there. So for this kind of a thing, add column is perfect. I'm going to use add column, and as we only have two kinds of duration, either minutes or seasons, we can use the conditional column option. This lets you build a if then condition based on your data. So here I'm just going to say duration in mins, and if my original duration column contains the word min in it, then I want to extract that word, that whole thing here. So the output will also be the duration column. So what this if formula does is it reads the duration column, checks for the word min, and if so, then prints the same thing as it is into the output column. Else, I just want to leave it blank. So I'm not going to even print anything there and click OK. This is going to extract all the minute information here wherever that is not available. So supposedly for the TV seasons, that will all be null. Now that this is there, I'm just going to take out the word min altogether. So I'm going to right click, replace values, space min with nothing. That takes out the min thing altogether and we just end up with the number. Right click again and change this to a whole number. So here we have the duration in minutes, and if it is not there, it's going to be null because that is not applicable for this particular type of an entry. So now that the duration is here, you can load it into Power BI to understand it, or while you are already here in Power Query, you can quickly go to view and apply column profile on that to kind of see a distribution of the durations by popularity. So the most popular duration is 90 minutes for 152 entries, which is really interesting. And a lot of 90s around here, and you can see as you go along some of the more and least popular durations. Here is 133 minutes, almost 2 hours beyond only 42 entries. But given this information, you can also kind of slice and dice by country, etc. in Power BI. The next type of data cleaning activity is when you have multiple items jammed together in one cell. So for example, here listed in is available in multiple categories. So you have got an entry in documentaries, but some of these entries have multiple items. Let's say if I want to analyze the data and ask a questions like how many children and family movies are there. Now that is listed as an individual item for this, but in some other things, it might appear as a comma separated value. So in that case, it will be very hard for us to get an accurate answer for that kind of a question unless you split this. So here I'm going to show you a powerful technique for kind of taking this value and expanding this out to a separate table. To do that, we'll need to create a duplicate of this existing query. So I'm going to right click on my Netflix titles query here and then say duplicate. We're going to get a second Netflix titles. Just rename this as category mapping. And in this table, we only need the show ID and the category column. So I'm going to keep the show ID column selected and then go and hold my control and selected listed in column. So only those two columns are selected. Right click and then say remove other columns. This is going to just take out every other column, leaving just show ID and listed in. Now that these two are there, let's select listed in column and then right click again and select split column by delimiter. The delimiter needs to be comma here because all the shows are comma separated by categories here. And expand the advanced options, and instead of splitting it into multiple columns, I want to split this into multiple rows. When you click OK, now each show, if it has multiple categories, will be expanded into that many rows. So for example, here S2, show ID S2, has 3 categories. So all of these 3 will come in here: international TV shows, TV dramas, and TV mysteries. That said, there was a small problem with our delimiter. If you see, our delimiter was set to comma, whereas there is an extra space also in some cases. So what you could also do is, after this splitting is done, right click on this column again, go to transform and trim the data. This is going to remove any extra spaces from beginning and end. And now TV drama will look the same everywhere it has appeared. And from this data, you can now start asking questions like how many children and family movies are there. So for example, here, if I just want to do a quick ad hoc analysis, I can right click, text filters, and then say equals, and it's going to filter down all the movies or shows that are tagged to children and family movies. As this is a separate table on its own, when you load this into Power BI, you could even use this to build a semantic model where this table is joined by show ID column with my main table so that I could do some more complicated analysis. Let's say you don't care so much about splitting everything. Whenever there are multiple categories, you just want to take the very first one and ignore everything else. That is also a possibility with Power Query. All you have to do is select the column and then go to add column, extract text before delimiter. And then the delimiter would be comma here. And when you click OK, you're going to get the very first category here as a separate column. I'm just going to rename this as first category. Then we could also use this as a proxy to answer business questions. In this case, you're going to lose out some of the other data. So this is where this kind of an expanded table is much better in my opinion. The next column that we want to analyze is the description column. This is a free text column that has lots of words, and sometimes analyzing this kind of data becomes really hard. Here is one technique that you can use. Let's say using this description column, I want to understand how many movies are about murder mysteries. So to do that, what we have to do is select this column and look for specific words and then tag this particular listing as a murder mystery or not. For this kind of a thing, we could use again the conditional column option, or you can even use the custom column and write Encode yourself. I'm not a huge fan of writing code by myself when there is a screen option to do it. So I'm going to use the conditional column option for this. So conditional column, the column name will be murder mystery ? And then here we're going to build a if condition to test whether the movies or listings are about murder mystery. So if my description contains the first word is murder, then yes. If my description contains death, yes. If my description contains kill, yes. Else, no. This is a really simple check and kind of a very naive check as well, because sometimes the show description might have the word kill, but it could be a separate thing altogether that has nothing to do with murder mystery. Let's just go with that, and it will give you a yes/no indicator about whether a show and a movie listing is about murder mystery or not. One problem with this approach is, obviously, apart from being a very naive check, is it doesn't cater for the case sensitivity. Power Query is a case sensitive language. By that, what I mean is, if the word here is murder, but M is capitalized, then that's not gonna be tagged as murder mystery here. So for example, let's just search for this. I'm gonna look for contains and look for capital murder. There's nothing there. I'm just gonna see if there is a So here death is there. Let's see here. An ex-race car driver is sent to barbaric prison where to get pardon he must defeat the inmate in a death race. So the death race is capitalized, and this particular one here is not tagged as murder mystery. Of course, it is not even a murder mystery, so we don't need to worry about it, but it just fails the check altogether. So to cater for these kind of things, what you will need to do is, before you add these kind of conditional columns, it's a good idea to lowercase everything. And again, here description being a text column, it doesn't matter what kind of a case this is. So what you could also do is you can go to the previous step, and then from here you can select that and then right click and then transform to lowercase. This is going to give you a warning saying, do you want to insert a step here? I'm going to insert that, and this is basically going to make that lowercase. At that point, once you have that, you can add the column to check for this, and that's going to check and give you that. And now if you search for the same thing again, so if I contains, everything is a lowercase, so now all the deaths come up here, and then you can see that everything that has death also has a murder mystery tag. After you clean up all the data like this, you can then go ahead and load it into Power BI. I'm going to conclude the cleaning steps with one more example, which is, let's say you have done all of this, but for a certain type of analysis or report, you don't need to look at everything. You can also apply filters within Power Query to restrict the data that goes into Power BI. The filters can be applied at two different areas. One is, let's say you don't want to look at all the columns. You do want to look at the data, but not all the columns. In that case, you can remove a column that you're not interested in. For example, I don't want to see the description anymore. I'm just interested in murder mystery analysis. I'm going to right click on description and remove that column. Mind you, it's not going to take out the logic from murder mystery. It's just going to take out that column altogether. That's all. This calculation is still going to happen, and you can load this data. The second kind of analysis that you can also do is at a row level. This is where, looking at all the data, let's say I'm only interested in items that are released after year 2000. So I can also go to here, release year, and then apply a number filter greater than, and then say 1999, so that anything more than 1999 will be filtered, and I'll get a subset of data. Once this is there, I can apply on this data. So let's just say close and apply. And you will have all the data loaded nicely here into Power BI. Now that it is here, you could do some simple analysis or build a complex report. Maybe I just want to see how many TV shows versus movies are there. I could build a pie chart, select my show type into legend, and something like show ID into values, so that we can see how many movies and TV shows are there. So about 68% of the entries in Netflix catalog are movies and the rest are TV shows. I could add a slicer by geography so that I can see. It's going to give me all the countries, especially multiple countries are involved. So this is actually a very big slicer, to be honest, but let's just look at Canada. So for Canada, the ratio again is same. But if I go down to China, I might have a different spread. But that's just like scratching the surface of Power BI. Do you know that we can use DAX and Power Pivot to analyze your data in a much more powerful and intuitive way? Here is a video that talks about DAX. And you can also use Power BI to build cool and awesome dashboards from your data. And here is a video that talks about that. I'll catch you in one of these two places. Bye.